Hello and welcome to Banking Frontiers Live to this wonderful conversation on all about data. Today, we are here to excavate how the insurance sector has been looking at the perspectives of data. With me, I have a very interesting luminary from the insurance sector. He is KV Dipu and he is the Chief Operating Officer. He heads innovations in the very interesting leading financial services insurance company in India today, Bajaj Allianz. Dipu, welcome to Banking Frontiers Live.
Thank you so much, Babu. Thanks for your warm welcome. And it's a pleasure being here. And I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation with you and Shri.
Thanks. Great. And I also have along with me and along with Dipu, another very interesting personality who has been working for decades on the area of data. And his name is Srikumar. And he is the founder and CEO of Alpharithm.
Thank you so much, Babu. Pleasure to be here chatting with you and Deepu. Looking forward to this exciting conversation today on data.
Wonderful. So, Dipu, we are working in an area where everyone is trying to democratize data. Okay. And there are a lot of areas where data and technology is adding value to the entire organizations. So I just wanted to understand from you, in what ways is business expertise adding value to data as an organization's asset? You already have a lot of data, and how your business expertise and data is combining together to add that value.
Yeah. No, it's a good question to start off with, Babu. We all understand the power of, data and analytics today. Having said that, you need somebody who has a business view of the entire landscape to ensure that it becomes meaningful, in terms of, a call to action. I think one of the first areas is, when you have a data scientist who's working on raw data, when you look at business expertise, you can help the data scientist, refine the target audience, because ultimately we need to ensure that we cater to, the right customer segment, because who are you doing this for? So that's clearly, where business expertise comes in. The other is, we all know, right, that it's not just data alone, right? There is an element of gut, right? So this combination of data and gut, is where, business expertise can come in, because that will help people leverage, data in the right manner in terms of, coming out with the right solutions in terms of products and services for customers. So to give you an example, let's say data indicates, let's say, there is a location, right? For example, you look at multiple indicators, right? You look at surrogate data. And that's where, business expertise can come in to say, which data points do you pick, which are relevant for you? So that's where this combination of data and gut can help. The third is a point that you already picked, that the whole idea of data today is not about having a central repository or a central team, but how do you democratize and decentralize so that decision making can be carried forward to the point or the person who's closest to the customer. So that's again where, business expertise, comes in terms of training, in terms of awareness, in terms of tools, and in terms of the right areas to pick. And the fourth is agility. In terms of, opportunity mapping, it can quickly redeploy, resources, using, the gaps that data points out. So I think, these are areas where business expertise comes in.
That was absolutely crisp. I think you made it very clear with that 4 point and made it crisp. And each of these area can actually go on and can be, diversified further to make it more comprehensive. So what kind of applications can actually today consume a lot of these kind of unstructured data today, as per your experience on what you have done? And how is the insurance industry as a industry leveraging this unstructured data today? You have brought in so many innovations, right from the apps to blockchain to various things. How are you leveraging these informations today, the data today, unstructured data, into these business applications?
Yeah. So Babu, today when you look at firms, in fact, 80 to 90% of data, is unstructured, right? This is typically, data sets, where it's not structured, in a predefined manner, right? You will have textual data, you will have open-ended survey responses, you will have social media conversations, right? You will have images, video, audio, right? All of this comes our way. And what we have done, therefore, we have been equal to the task, in terms of processing this. So how this helps us, is in terms of, giving, experiences which are not possible before. And let me just give you with one simple example. Let's say a customer is trying to locate our branch. He goes and clicks on maps and he tries to locate our branch. So we have a bot which pops up, and basically says, you're trying to locate this branch. Is there a way I can help you digitally? And if the customer can be helped digitally, then it obviates, the need for him to go to the branch. So that's how, we've been able to, leverage this. And, I guess, from a technical perspective, Shri can add his perspective on unstructured data and, how, data firms, deal with it.
Excellent. Sri, you have been into the business of making data, democratizing data and helping organization to consume that data in a very, very interesting fashion. How have you seen the consumption of unstructured data and how are organizations leveraging it, especially from an insurance industry perspective?
I think most organizations, to be honest, from what we are seeing in the market, are still struggling to understand or make sense of the structured data itself. So there's a lot of unstructured data being collected today, as we all know, and organizations are still trying to work out the best way to derive value from the data. Many of the top organizations, leading organizations, have been successful in that. Some of the other organizations are still getting there. But in the main, I think what we are seeing is, especially in the insurance context, claim processing, for instance, seems to be a big area where somebody can today take an image of the accident and stuff like that, and send it to the insurer straight away in a matter of minutes using AI and ML technologies. The claim can be processed, right? So that is where most of the insurance clients we see are processing unstructured data at the moment. But there's still a lot of unstructured data hidden in the form of images and videos and PDF files and forms and metadata, logs, and so on and so forth, which is still there, as we call that the dark data, right? So there are a lot of technologies that organizations are currently using in order to derive value from the data.
Interesting. So obviously, I am sure that there is a lot of scope for creating data unicorns in this world, which can actually work in and around everything about data. And do you really expect unicorns to emerge out of this data business, particularly the MDM and things like that? What is your opinion, Sri, in this area?
India is one of the, I think number 2 in the world at the moment, I guess, only after the US, to have largest number of unicorns. If I'm right, this year itself we've had so many unicorns. I guess most of these unicorns definitely appreciate data as their asset. But a lot of larger enterprises, they also realize that data is a critical asset for their organization. But firstly, let's look at what capabilities MDM provides to business. Now, from my perspective, it's a mixture of people, process, and technology. An MDM initiative probably provides the ability to extract data from these multiple silos within the enterprise, again, apply rules to standardize, cleanse, and deduplicate, and create a central repository, with Dipu was just talking about, which then acts as a single source of truth, right? Now, during this process, multiple stakeholders within the business and IT have to come together in order to govern the data. Right, data governance is an important aspect of master data management. So if a vendor can manage data for many clients at scale, only then they can become a unicorn, because we are not talking about 1 or 2 or 5 clients. We need to be able to process the data for many clients, that too at scale, in order to sort of qualify and become a unicorn. But for that to work, a lot of things that needs to happen or come together. For instance, the data privacy policies, the data governance framework and security should be watertight on both sides, the vendor side and the client side, so that the vendor can apply the generic rules, technology, and the framework. So the solution is not specific to one client. It has to be a framework that is repeatable across multiple clients. That's where you see the success in organizations like Swiggy and the Flipkarts of the world, because they've created a framework that is applicable to millions and billions of people, not just specific to 1 or 2 organizations, right? So that is the challenge that we have, putting that framework together that the client understands, that the vendor can resonate to, and everybody is happy, and only then we can create a unicorn. But I think it's a great thought, Babu, and I'm really looking forward to the day when a data organization from a vendor perspective becomes a unicorn.
Wonderful. Now coming to Dipu, you have seen machine learning doing a lot of work and reducing a lot of workload and making things more satisfying for the customers and things like that. Now, a lot of it is relevant and dependable on data at the end of the day. So, how is data management making machine learning more powerful and reducing the cost and risk these days? Have you had any experiences in that area?
Yeah, I think Babu, it's a fairly straightforward situation. Data management and machine learning go hand in hand, because when you teach a non-human being, you basically teach using data, and that's how the machine also learns, and then it tries to apply its algorithms to come out with solutions. So let me just give you two three instances of this can happen. So for example, if you look at customer service as a function, right? The data inputs, in terms of what are the customer satisfaction surveys telling you, process comparisons, the KPIs, the team works on, resolution rates. When you look at all these points of data, and this feeds into the machine learning landscape, right? The accuracy of the resolutions can go up. Similarly, if you look at supply chain management, right? Data inputs on inventory levels, order fulfillment, the life cycle, the supply chain life cycle, it boosts supply chain efficiency, right? And if you look at BFSI, broadly, just going even beyond insurance, right? For example, one of the world's largest payment processing firms, right? It runs three types of decisions, on real-time transactions, whether to accept the card, the level of the risk in the transaction, and the processing cost. And to do this, it has actually built a data pipeline, and it has an intelligent authentication service, right, which makes in-stream decisions on transactions, whether to ask the customer, to provide additional information, right? Because then you need to balance, the risk of the user abandoning it or the fraud. And in less than 10 milliseconds, you need to decide and convey.
Interesting perspectives. Sri, do you like to add anything in addition to this about data and machine learning?
I think AI and ML is definitely contributing to a lot of business. I mean, increasing the business value for a lot of clients, in my perspective, because we're dealing with a lot of organization in the BFSI, in the manufacturing retail sector as well. So it's not just a hype; it's definitely adding value to clients today. But what we are seeing, Babu and Dipu, is that while the models are necessary to deliver that value, the data scientists who are involved in creating these models from a technology perspective still seem to be spending about 70% of their time in putting the data pieces together, because the data within an organization is spread across multiple silos, right? They don't have a central repository of what does this data mean, even for simple things like what does the definition of a customer. Now, the marketing department's view is different from a finance team's view to different from a the operations team view of what the definition of a customer means. So in the absence of a central data catalog, the data scientists have been struggling to deliver the data that is required for AI and ML purposes. So I think getting data together is a key sort of ingredient for AI and ML success, is what we're saying.
Excellent. So, Dipu, when it comes to insurance business, is there any interesting metrics that you have developed? How you measure the success of data, or measure the meaningful value of this data that organization is working on collecting, managing, cleansing, and democratizing?
Babu, again, it's a nice question to round off our discussion, because what you measure is what you manage. So when you look at this, conceptually, you can look at it in two, three different ways. One is when you look at data, one is the actual meaning of data, right? Because we have seen so many data security incidents happen globally, right? So one is the value of the data, and the other is the intangible value, right, in terms of its impact on your brand and so on and so forth. And when you cut to it, when you look at data broadly, you look at it in two ways. One is, how can it help you generate revenue, right? Because the whole idea is, how do you get it together to basically offer better products and services to your customers, and in the process, grow your revenue. That is one. The other angle is, how do you look at it, for example, to solve problems? I mentioned to you, right, that, for example, if somebody is clicking on our branch, right, how can you give him digital servicing on the spot, right, and make it a win-win for the customer? And then if you look at, some of the metrics, which we work on, there are, 4 or 5 buckets, where I can talk about. One is, data can increase transparency, because when you talk about why you took decisions, it can have huge cultural impact, right? You basically are able to explain everything, it just, increases transparency, that's one. The other is, of course, the standard classic definition of the value of data, which is it gives you insights which you did not know before. So clearly, right, you discover as you go along. That is there. The third is when you're talking about firms today, it's not about a one-size-fits-all approach. As you use data, you can customize at scale. I think, that's clearly, one value data brings in. Fourth is automation, because when you do an analysis, using data, you can do a clear Pareto. You figure out that if you basically automate these three processes, it contributes to 80% automation, in that area. And lastly, it's also about innovation. Data can also create serendipity. Suddenly you look at patterns which you did not see before, right? And that's how, it can help you, innovate.
Shri, is there any interesting measure other than this that you have come across, which we can learn from?
We have. So there is, like Dipu correctly said, is a tangible and intangible, value of data that we have. Certain things we can definitely see. Ultimately, data has to have an impact on the revenue, cost, risk for the business, etc., etc. But Gartner did something a while back in terms of coming up with a term called infonomics. Now, infonomics is about measuring the value of data in organizations. Again, we have seen some advanced economies of the world and large enterprises, very large enterprises, to be honest, being successful in actually implementing these data monetization metrics or infonomic metrics, for instance. So there are a lot of metrics in the market under the infonomics category. It's a very interesting topic to read and if possible to implement as well. So that's what we are seeing in the market, but I think it is very important.
One more critical area that we have been talking and thinking about is the data graveyard that organizations have. And there has been a lot of data which the organizations never use, never make sense, and still you spend so much of money to store that data and maintain that data and retrieve that data. How can organizations make sense out of this? And is there any use of it, or what are the organizational policies governing this particular framework? Any thoughts on it, Dipu, from an insurance perspective?
And from a policy perspective, broadly, there are 4 or 5, metrics we look at, to ensure that we don't get into this data graveyard situation. One is look at simple and plain usage, right? You might have data, but are you using it, right? Clearly, that's one. The second is look at it from a regulatory angle, both ways. One is sometimes you need to keep data because of regulatory requirements, and sometimes you should not keep data because of regulatory requirements. So, both ways you look at it. And the third is, just make it a part of your culture, through constant awareness, checks, multiple lines of defense, and just ensuring that everybody adheres to it. So broadly, this is how we approach it.
Wonderful. And maybe a purging policy also, purge the data that is not required.
Very much, yes.
I think again, I'm sure Dipu, you have some governance policies, right? Because all the policies that you define would roll into the data governance framework within the organization. That would then define what is the policy to collect the data, to store the data, process the data, and also archive the data or purge the data, and so on and so forth. Put principles around it, especially in the context of GDPR, which is already in place, and also in the context of India Privacy Act or Data Protection Bill that is just around the corner in India, right? So which is created in similar lines of GDPR, where consent is another important factor, Babu, that we are hearing from clients, that we cannot collect and process customer data without their explicit consent. So that is going to be a big topic in 2022, I hear, from the BFSI sector, especially because there's a lot of data that has already been collected. So that is on one side. A lot of data is being collected as we speak and will be collected in the future, but we can't do that anymore without capturing customers' consent alongside that data. So that's a very important aspect as well. I would just add to Dipu's points.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for a wonderful conversation on all about data.
Thank you, Babu. Thank you, Shri. It was a wonderful conversation. It was good to share and learn.
Great.
Thank you, Dipu. Thank you so much, Babu, as well, for organizing this. It was a great conversation, and I look forward to chatting with both of you separately.
Absolutely. Yeah, we should catch up, sometime.
Yeah, we should.